All right. Good afternoon to all of our friends over in the United Kingdom. Let me just start by saying a few comments here before we dive into today's agenda. First and foremost, thank you for joining us here for a few minutes to talk about how UK companies utilizing JD Edwards can automate their credit card payments in a JD Edwards connected fashion. I'll walk through some intros for our team, and then again, we'll just kind of take a quick view at the agenda. We're joined by Fermin Rodriguez, our managing director, Diego Fernandez, who is our director of product. He's going to be handling the actual demo portion of the agenda. And then speaking is Jerry Van Dalen, account executive sales manager here with Smarter Commerce. Just for a quick view of what our time together is going to look like, I'll spend a little bit of time discussing who is Smarter Commerce, providing an overview for our organization. Then we'll talk about Smarter Commerce payments, really the solution, the product of focus for our discussion today, and all the different facets of that solution and how it can drive real savings and real automation for your organization. But certainly the majority of our time together is going to be invested in an actual demonstration of Smarter Commerce payments. We like to leave a few minutes at the end of today's session for any Q&A, but for all the attendees on the webinar, feel free to type in the questions throughout the webinar, and I'll do my best job of answering those as we go throughout our time together. So for a quick overview, who is Smarter Commerce? Well, the first thing to say is we've been around for 30 years. And in all those years, we've been working within the JD Edwards community. We have implemented JD Edwards, in multiple geographies across the globe for those 30 years. Probably implemented JD Edwards hundreds of times, completed JD Edwards related consulting projects hundreds of times. And what we came to realize was that the JD Edwards community was really underserved in a couple of key areas of functionality, and one of those being payments, credit card payments. And so after consulting for about 10 years throughout the 90s, in the early 2000s, we began to develop a family of solutions, which we have branded as Smarter Commerce. And for the last 20 years, that's really what we've been focused on. It's helping JD Edwards launch successful projects in the e-commerce space, the payments and credit card space, and the retail space by creating products that unite their commerce and ERP into one simple automated system. As an organization, we're based in Miami, Florida, in the United States, but we have professionals working with us all across the world in multiple countries in an office of developers in San Jose, Costa Rica. As I mentioned, what we came to realize in the early 2000s was that a lot of tech and business leaders were encountering the same kinds of problems when they were trying to launch or refine commerce or payment related initiatives, right? And that challenge really revolved around a lack of connection. Perhaps you have today a way of collecting credit card payments for open invoices or making credit card authorizations for a sales order by your customer sales representative team within JD Edwards. But you feel like you have this big project in front of you where there's a need to automate, right? You want to try and bring this separated credit card process into JD Edwards and kind of put those together, but it doesn't feel like you really have the right platform to succeed. And then when you try and explore the cost of integrating these two systems, very, very often they can be very high costs. So as an organization, what we've been striving for, again, for the last 20 years, is building out connected commerce platforms that enable your organization to conquer the complexity of payments, of commerce, of retail, by integrating that into JD Edwards, which would allow your team to focus on growth. Now, obviously, today we'll be focusing our discussion on payments, but as a whole, that's really the driving ethos, the driving idea that pushes Smarter Commerce forward. Over the past 20 years, we've had the opportunity of working with many JD Edwards organizations. Perhaps some of these logos are familiar to you. Certainly, some of these organizations are global enterprises using JD Edwards and also using Smarter Commerce payments in multiple geographies, many of which are in the United Kingdom as well. A couple of things to point out about these customers. Number one, we have over 135 JD Edwards customers, again, based in multiple geographies across the world. A good mix of B2B and B2C organizations, many different industries and sizes represented here. But they also have a couple of other things in common. Number one, they all use JD Edwards. And at some point, they were processing credit cards in a very manual fashion. Perhaps they had a virtual terminal where a customer service representative would build a sales order inside of JD Edwards, and then the customer would indicate they would like to pay with a credit card, and then the CSR would have to get out of JD Edwards, go to the virtual terminal, type in the customer credit card, submit the authorization, go back into JD Edwards, indicate that, and then have to reconcile that at the end of the day. Just a very manual process, and really created a feeling of being overwhelmed for many of our customers because that process is just not automated, plenty of non-value added work, really stemming from that lack of ERP connection. But through their partnership with Smarter Commerce, they were able to get in a position where they now were able to launch a successful payment initiative, to be in a position where they can now be an industry leader, where they're accepting credit card payments in an automated fashion, in a secure fashion. That's what we've been able to accomplish with our JD Edwards customer base, which continues to grow, not just in size, but also in terms of deployment across the world. So if we were to answer a very basic question around what is Smarter Commerce, I think the easiest way of saying it is sort of this definition here, right? Smarter Commerce is a family of solutions that help companies unite commerce, payments, and retail into one simple automated system that connects with JD Edwards. As mentioned, the focus of our discussion today is going to be payment processing, and we'll get into the details of what exactly that is. But we also like to make customers and JD Edwards organizations aware that we also have an e-commerce solution, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a B2B, B2C digital commerce platform with real-time connectivity to JD Edwards. We have a retail solution for JD Edwards organizations that are doing in-person or card-present transactions in a retail or branch setting. We also have an integration to AvaTax for sales tax and use tax and VAT tax compliance, and then a call center management solution as well. So in terms of our payment processing solution, let's dive into what exactly that solution is and a couple of different facets that the audience may want to consider, right? So fundamentally, what Smarter Commerce Payment does, it is a JD Edwards native application that sits in addition to the sales order entry form, the P4210 or P42101, that allows a customer service representative, a CSR, to accept a credit card payment at moment of sales order entry. More specifically, they'll obtain an authorization, okay? And that card would then be charged when the product is shipped. We also have a capability called authorized by email or text, or authorized by message, which we'll dive into in just a couple of minutes, which allows this functionality, this credit card authorization at moment of sales order entry, to be extended and essentially delivered to the customer via an encrypted link in an email or text. And we also include flexibility when it comes to working with different credit card processors. We work with every major credit card processor around, and obviously support United Kingdom as well as multiple other countries in the EU and across the world. We also feature payment terminal integration for JD Edwards in case there's a need for a card to be processed in person. And then we can also extend this payment application to third-party e-commerce platforms beyond Smarter Commerce e-commerce. You'll see these capabilities in action today in just a couple of minutes in the actual demonstration. So there's sort of two sides to the coin, right? There's Smarter Commerce payments for sales order, and then the same functionality can then be extended to invoice payments, meaning that if you have an AR professional, an account receivable professional, who is looking to collect on an invoice, or a customer calls in and would like to pay an invoice using a credit card, you can still use that same JD Edwards native user experience that Smarter Commerce offers, except now extend it over to invoices. We also support the same functionality for invoice pay by email, and then as well as ACH and EFT for the US and Canada. Additionally, we offer customers the option to launch a digital payment portal, what we call Smarter Commerce e-payments, which extends all of these invoice payment capabilities over to the digital space for your customers to log in, look at invoices, pay with a credit card, ACH, EFT in the US and Canada. They can even pay with PayPal and support auto pay capabilities. They can also use it as an actual portal, right, where they can view invoices, download invoices, view history, account summary information, so on. So the capability itself can be extended not just within JD Edwards, but also to your actual customers to enable them to take care of some of these invoice payment and account management capabilities. I want to zoom in on one capability that I think is very important, especially in a world where security and PCI compliance has become increasingly important. And that capability is what we call pay by message. I'll kind of walk through a typical scenario here and then talk about the two different ways that this capability is deployed. First of all, a transaction will typically originate within JD Edwards. If, for example, if you're placing a sales order, the customer service representative will be talking with your customer, building an order, and when the time comes to accept credit card payment, the customer service representative has a couple of options. They can authorize the sales order with an existing credit card that has been stored at the payment gateway, so an existing card on file, or they can authorize with a new credit card. If they would like to authorize with a new credit card, you have two options. The customer can read aloud the credit card numbers to the customer service representative, and they can type in the information on the Smarter Commerce payment page, or the customer service representative can trigger an authorized by message email or text that will go out to the customer originating within JD Edwards. Again, your customer service rep will trigger an email or a text to your customer, who will then open up the email and click on the secure encrypted link, which will then take them to the Smarter Commerce payment page where they can view summary information for that sales order. They can view totals, and then they can select how they would like to pay. Typically they'll input their own credit card information. They would hit submit pay now, and that would be processed and saved back into JD Edwards, and the sales order would be released off of hold. The same functionality exists for an invoice, except now the customer receives messages, regular or automated messages originating within JD Edwards containing that same payment link. They can click on that, and on the invoice payment page delivered by Smarter Commerce, hosted on the Smarter Commerce Cloud, your customer can then view all outstanding invoices. They can select what invoices they would like to pay, and they can go ahead and pay those invoices, and then that would automatically close out the receivable in JD Edwards. It really is a powerful capability. It, again, allows your team to be totally removed from any credit card information ever being spoken over the phone or typed in your systems. Naturally, as we deal with credit card information, Smarter Commerce Payments has been architected from the ground up to prioritize payment security. Really can't be emphasized enough in today's environment. A couple of points that I think are really important for us that you will see in the demonstration today. Number one, all credit card information, all sensitive cardholder information is 100% tokenized. So that you are not storing any credit card information within your JD Edwards servers or even within Smarter Commerce. All of the sensitive cardholder information is stored at the payment gateway level. There's a couple of payment gateways that we support, but all of them store the sensitive cardholder information at the payment gateway level, not within Smarter Commerce, not within JD Edwards, which means, generally speaking, that JD Edwards and Smarter Commerce are out of scope for PCI security. At least it's very much a streamline from that perspective. Additionally, the Smarter Commerce Cloud offering provides all of the necessary hardware for your team to run Smarter Commerce payments. This means that our team takes care of setting up the application server, hosting the technology, so that it's not something that your technical team needs to be concerned with. And then additionally, Smarter Commerce supports 3D Secure. And for anybody that's not familiar with that, 3D security protocol basically adds an additional level of payment protection to an online transaction, whether it's on an e-commerce website or if it's on a Smarter Commerce payment application like the one that we'll see today. Essentially, what it does is that as a digital purchase is being completed or a sales order is being completed, the cardholder, in this case the CSR, or the customer themselves on the phone, is asked to provide an additional proof of identity, typically a kind of a password, maybe they're texted a code or some kind of a temporary PIN that they need to add to that transaction in order for it to be additionally validated. It is a requirement in the United Kingdom, and so obviously Smarter Commerce has risen to the occasion and is now supporting that capability for the United Kingdom. So with that said, I'll transition now to the demonstration for today. What you will see is Diego Fernandez, again, Director of Product, working in a JD Edwards Enterprise One demonstration environment, probably a familiar environment to all of our attendees. And he will walk through a series of use cases. working within a sales order environment or an invoice payment environment utilizing Smarter Commerce Payments. He's going to highlight many of the capabilities that we discussed today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Diego Fernandez, you should have the ability to share your screen. I've just gone ahead and promoted you to co-host. So feel free to go ahead and share your screen, and I will let you know to confirm when we're looking at your screen. Okay, we are looking at your screen at JD Edwards login page.
Thank you, Jerry, and good afternoon to everyone on the webinar. As Jerry mentioned, I've gone ahead and shared my screen. What we're looking at currently is a sign-in screen to JD Edwards Enterprise One 9.2 environment. But please note that our solution works with all of the 9s of JD Edwards. So we have customers in 9.0 and 9.1, and obviously many customers already in 9.2. So for this demonstration, I want to walk through a couple of scenarios. As Jerry mentioned, we handle many different aspects with our payment solution, but due to time, it'll be difficult to touch on all of those capabilities. So we're going to focus on just a few capabilities for this demonstration. And if there's interest, obviously, please reach out and we can dive into a lot more detail within our solution. So let's begin with a typical order to cash process where we have a customer calling in to your call center or salesperson, and they're going to go ahead and enter a sales order. As part of that sales order, they want to go ahead and provide credit card information and apply a credit card against the sales order so that they're charged against their credit card. We will walk through this entire cycle from beginning to end, so that we can see the entry portion of a sales order and the requests to a customer to provide their credit card information. Once we've obtained an authorization of that credit card, we'll go ahead and print PIC slips, which is normally a standard process within Edwards, ship confirmation, another standard process. And then typically after the shipment confirmation, we'll do what's called a settlement of funds or capturing of funds for the product that's been shipped, along with any additional fees or charges added to that sales orders for things like handling or freight charges or delivery fees and so on. In addition to any tax calculation that may have occurred over the transaction. Once we've captured those funds and basically you've settled against the credit card authorization originally obtained in the order entry process, and at that point you will go ahead and receive funding from your merchant bank. After that, we'll do a couple of typical steps in the order to cash process. We'll print invoice. We'll go ahead and do what's called the sales update and posting of sales into the accounting system, into the customer ledger system. And then once we do that, we'll add an additional step that our customers typically run, which is called the payment posting. And this takes all of those settlements, all those capturing of funds, and auto applies them against the invoice created during the sales update process. This allows you to complete the process from end to end, applying cash correctly, applying the credit card charge correctly, and then all you have to do is reconcile those payments when you receive your wire transfer from your merchant bank. So let's go ahead and get started with this process. We'll be using the standard sales order entry application. And as part of this process, I'll walk through the different capabilities that you're going to find within the solution. So once I've entered in all of my sales order information within JD Edwards, which is this is your typical sales order entry application, it'll then drive you to the line portion where it allows you to enter the different products that the customer is desiring to purchase here. So we'll go ahead and enter a couple of demonstration products into our order. And once we've completed all of the order entry with that customer on the phone, your salesperson will typically press either the submit and enter new or submit and close button, either one driving that salesperson or CSR, customer service rep person, to a application delivered by the Smarter Commerce solution. As you can see, the application will look and feel and follow all of the standards of JD Edwards Enterprise One. This application allows you to integrate out to the payment gateway and out to the Pay Cloud to process an authorization against a credit card. But first, let's just take a quick look at some of the features and the capabilities that you have with our solution and specifically with this application. First off, we do provide a capability to store credit cards on file. These credit cards are stored within the payment gateway. They're never stored within your JD Edwards. They're tokenized by the payment gateway, and a token is provided back to your JD Edwards environment to be stored in your JD Edwards environment so that then can be used later. Now, as you can see, this customer does not have a card on file, but if your customer desires to save a card on file with you, it's as easy as pressing this button and adding a new card on file, which saves it out in the payment gateway, tokenizes it, and returns the token for reference purposes within your JD Edwards. In addition, within this solution, you have a capability of what we call deposit processing. This is used a lot by our customers that have long-standing orders, such as manufacture to order or assemble to order, where it may take many months to build out a product, and you want to create sort of a deposit or installment plan, allowing you to charge a percentage of the overall total at intervals of time, and then once the product is delivered, charge the remaining balance. So you can set up a deposit plan or installment plan against the order, authorizing and charging funds against the credit card provided. In addition, you'll see over to the right-hand side a running total of the order that I just entered, where we're calculating product total, any sales tax calculated by JD Edwards, and we support all of the major sales tax compliant tax engines. We obviously support standard JD Edwards tax tables. We also support Vertex as a tax engine, and we support the Avalara Avatax cloud-based tax engine. So any of the supported tax engines that JD Edwards supports can be utilized as part of our solution. We have a freight calculation engine to uplift the authorization during order entry in case you don't have a freight, you're not using a freight calculation at order entry, but adding it in later in the process. And then obviously we have our order total. In addition, we have surcharge capabilities for those that want to pass through the processor charge fees to your end customer. You can turn on or off any of these capabilities within our solution. It's really up to you whether or not you want to take advantage of those and do things like a surcharge on top of the typical authorization and credit card charge. Once we have our order totals to be authorized, as in this example, then you have multiple ways to authorize the credit card. If the customer had a card on file with you, you can just select the token and go ahead and authorize funds against that credit card on file, remembering that the credit card on file is not stored within your JD Edwards, but stored in the payment gateway. And it's a responsibility of the payment gateway to handle that card following all PCI compliant regulations. What's stored locally is a token that you can then select and go ahead and authorize funds against that card on file. In addition, you have a capability of authorizing with a new card. This functionality allows your CSR or salesperson to hear the credit card number from the customer provided via the telephone, and then they would type in that credit card into a secure payment gateway solution, and then going forward with an authorization against that credit card. And then another capability we have for those customers that have card present requirements, where you may have a counter operation and you're using JD Edwards, or you have point of sale type solutions and you're using JD Edwards. We have integration with physical terminal chip and PIN devices that allow a physical presence and the customer to swipe their credit card, to read the chip and PIN, or to use the contactless reader of the chip in the credit card. And then lastly, which is the method that we'll be viewing today, is a capability that Jerry highlighted during his presentation of authorize by message. This is where we send out an encrypted email or an encrypted text to the end user, and that end user, that customer, clicks on that text message via their telephone, clicks on the email via the telephone, or clicks on the email via their desktop or laptop, and that customer is then driven to a hosted payment portal, will there enter in their credit card information themselves directly. And then at that point, authorize funds so that the order can continue. So here I'm going to go ahead and perform that process. I'll go ahead and select an email on file with this customer. And once I've done that, I'll go ahead and save my order to JD Edwards, order number 8598. Once I've saved my order into JD Edwards, if I go and inquire on our order here, we're going to notice, and let me just go ahead and inquire on my specific order. We're going to notice that the order has been saved to JD Edwards, but the order has been placed on a specific hold code, awaiting credit card payment. In my environment, that's a C2 hold. So the order is saved. The customer is obviously disconnected from the phone, and the customer will then receive an email where they can go ahead and continue the process of entering that credit card information themselves. So now let's mimic that. I received here this sample email. Please note that when the solution is implemented for your organization, this email will be branded to your organization colors, style, and logos, so that the end customer has confidence that the email being received is obviously from your organization. This email will highlight to the customer the order information that they just placed, along with the amount that's pending to be authorized. The customer will then click on their phone or desktop the Pay Now button, which will drive them to a customer branded, again, a hosted payment page that is branded to your customer logo and colors and font style, where they can review their order. They can see their order number, the order date that they placed it, the PO number provided, the order totals that you're seeing here to the right, along with the products that they've ordered for this order and their billing and customer number information. Once they are ready with this capability, that they're ready to enter their credit card and they verified all of the information, they would select on credit card payment, which will then bring up a 3DS credit card window. It is here that the customer would then enter in all of their relevant information, such as their phone number, their billing address, and the name on card information that they would be entering themselves via the secure portal that they are linked to. So once they've entered in all of the information related to their credit card, their billing address, and so on in the 3DS payment window, they can go ahead and click on apply, which will validate that information and prompt them to enter in a security code that they've received via their telephone, via their mobile device that they have associated to their credit card. So here is just a sample of that page. Again, this would be branded to your organization's capabilities and colors and fonts. And then once they've entered in their security code that they received, they would click submit, which would do a complete validation of the transaction. And at that point, allow them to continue the payment process and authorize those funds on their credit card. As you can see, a very simple process to the end customer. The end customer receives an encrypted email. They click on that email or that encrypted text message. They're taken to a hosted payment page, again, that they can manage on their telephone, their mobile device, or their desktop or laptop. And then they would enter all of their credit card information in a 3DS compliant card entry, put in their PIN, and validate their card. Once they've validated their card, they will receive a second email similar to this, basically letting them know that their credit card has been authorized for a total of $463.34, $474.70, 92, including the credit card surcharge if you turn on credit card surcharge capabilities. Back in JD Edwards, our order is still on hold, waiting for that payment to be processed back to JD Edwards so that JD Edwards knows that the customer has made a payment. For that aspect, we have a UBE, a batch report that we provide with our solution that you would put in your scheduled processes. And this retrieves all authorizations done by message or email or text by the customer. So we're going to go ahead and manually execute that here within our environment. But typically our customers run this process in a scheduled process, depending on the volumes that you're processing, maybe once every 15 minutes, once an hour, once a day, all depending on how often you want to retrieve those payments and apply them to JD Edwards. Now, once the batch report has completed, if I refresh my screen here, you'll notice that the hold code has been eliminated. The order is now ready to continue the process because we now have an authorization that has been returned from the payment, the PayCloud payment gateway solution and applied to your JD Edwards to continue on. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and continue the process here quickly. We have an order that is sitting at status 540, which in my environment means running of PIXLIPS. So I'm going to execute a couple of steps here that are typically found in the order to cash process. We'll run PIXLIPS, allowing us to generate the picking down at the warehouse so that we can get the product out the door. So we'll give that just a moment to process. And then we'll go ahead and run what's called the shipment confirmation within JD Edwards. And as part of the shipment confirmation, as you're aware, JD Edwards has a capability of adding in additional fees to the transaction. And so we'll do that here, mimicking that there's a freight delivery fee of the product, in this case, actual fees of $25 for delivery. So we've completed our shipment confirmation, and now we're at a point of doing what's called that credit card settlement or capturing of funds that we I mentioned earlier. The settlement of funds charges the credit card for the total amount of fees and total amount of charges, including sales tax. So typically customers will execute the credit card settlement or capturing of funds after they've confirmed all of the product has gone out the door and they've calculated any additional fees or charges to that sales order. That way you can have one charge aligning to the total amount on the invoice. So here we're going to go ahead and do that process. We'll go ahead and settle funds for the order that we're working with so that we can then move the order along and charge the credit card. Now, this report is a key report for both your accounting folks and also to get paid. So it's important that for our customers, they run this report at least once a day, but you can run it multiple times in a day, depending on, again, your volumes and your processes within your JD Edwards, but at a minimum once a day so that we can charge that credit card and then obviously obtain the funds. And this report is then utilized by your accounting folks later in the process to reconcile the monies received from your merchant bank. This will then move the order along to the next step in the process, which would, in my environment, is the printing of invoices in the order to cash process. So we'll go ahead and do that and print the standard JD Edwards invoice within the order to cash process. So here, let's give it just a moment to process the invoice. And then normally after invoices are processed, you typically will run your sales update, which does all of the accounting posting, customer ledger posting, sales ledger posting, and so on. So we'll do that for our order here, and we'll give it just a moment to complete. And then typically after you've run sales update, you go ahead and do what's called the general ledger post, which will go ahead and process here also to complete the invoicing process. Now, it's important to note that JD Edwards, through the sales update process of JD Edwards, it creates an customer ledger invoice record within the customer's account in the customer ledger. So if I jump over to the customer ledger for this specific customer and look up the order that we're currently working with, we'll notice that there's an invoice that's been posted and there's a gross amount of $461 and change, and along with it's still open for $461 and change. It's still open because we haven't run the last step of the process yet, which is the payment posting process that we deliver as part of our solution. This will take all of those charges, all those settlements that we did back at credit card settlement, and auto post them into the AR system, clearing the open AR invoice. So let's go ahead and do that to continue our process along. That way, we can automate all of the payment posting and do all of this for you automatically, so that the only thing you would need to worry about is once you've received the funds from your merchant bank, you can reconcile those funds automatically against the accounts receivable system. So here, if I return back to my customer ledger inquiry screen and I refresh my screen here, we'll notice now that the open amount is gone and a receipt record is written to the JD Edwards system for the receipt amount of the credit card charge, along with the last four digits of the credit card number, which is allowed to be entered in as a reference purpose, so that in case your customer ever calls and wants to know what credit card was charged for this order, you can highlight the last four digits of their card number. So as you can see, we automate the process from end to end. And then once we've posted all of the payments, cleared all of the ARs, you can utilize our reconciliation processes that we deliver to download all of the transactions from the payment processor and auto reconcile those payments against the monies and against the charges that were auto applied during the payment post process. And if there's any differences, you can review them using our manual payment reconciliation application so that you can verify any differences, maybe due to timing of the payments being posted. So as you can see, we complete the process from end to end, gaining that authorization up front as part of the order, and the rest of the process is fully automated. So that's one typical scenario that we see very often within our customers, allowing you to capture that credit card up front. Another typical scenario that we have within our solution is that many customers will, upon order entry, create the order against terms or against their credit limit, and later request to make payment, but instead of paying with a check or wire transfer, they like to clear off those open invoices with a credit card. If they call into your call center, we have an application that allows you to see open AR invoices for a particular customer, such as this example here. I'm going to see I'm working with customer CSC Corporation. And if I go out to see their open AR invoices, it gives me a list of their invoices. And then right here, I can go ahead and select the invoices that they would like to pay off. So once I've selected those and then return to the main screen, it'll give me a list of the invoices. I can override the amount here in case they only want to do a partial payment against an invoice line. And I can see the total amount that's going to be charged, again, including a credit card surcharge if you turn on that capability. And at this point, with that customer on the phone, I can go ahead and charge their credit card for the amount that the customer is desiring. And they would go ahead and read off their credit card number to me over the phone, and I can go ahead and enter and validate the credit card information while having that customer on the phone and auto apply that to their invoices. So here I've validated a successful transaction. I've charged their credit card for $563.75. And if I return to JD Edwards, all I need to do is update their information so that I can go ahead and apply that payment. So as you can see, allowing your customers to also not just place orders and authorize funds on their credit card, but also to clear off invoices using their accounts receivable applications. But we have many other capabilities that may be of interest to you. We have a capability that within our accounts receivable collections module, where you can set up an email reminder system, sending emails to customers, reminding them when invoices are coming due so that they can make payment automatically. So you set up this system, you set up our batch reports in your scheduler system. And then as invoices are coming due based on the rules that you've configured, the customer will receive an email similar to this one here, where it's telling them, oops, excuse me, wrong one, this one here, where it's telling them that they have some invoices due, 2 invoices in particular. This email will obviously be branded to your customer specifications, logo, colors, and fonts, and the total amount that's coming due. And when the customer receives this email reminder, they would click again, either via their telephone or on their desktop or laptop on the email that they've received. It'll drive them to a secure payment portal, listing all of their invoices due. Obviously, this portal will be branded to your customers, to your company specifications, logo, colors, and fonts, so that the customer, your customers will have confidence in the system and that they're working within your environment. They would select their invoices and then walk through to make payment. And again, here, if they select credit card, they will be prompted to enter their 3DS information for their order, along with their address, name on card, and the actual credit card to be utilized, entered by the customer into the 3DS compliant portal. Once they've entered all of their information, they would click apply, which would process that information. And again, they would receive a purchase text with the code that they would enter, and they can go ahead and submit the final payment. And that charges the credit card. And then we would retrieve, once the customer is done, back in JD Edwards, we have, again, processes that you would set up in your scheduler to retrieve automatically all of those payments as customers are making them, and process them into your JD Edwards solution. And then the last thing I'd like to just highlight here is, if you have customers that want to get on an auto pay system, we have capabilities there also, where you can configure customers to set up auto pay rules that will charge their credit card or perform an ACH transfer automatically against those invoices that meet the rule. So here is an example of that. You would set up an auto pay rule. Here I have one for customer 55175, and they have decided to make payment upon invoice date prior to the invoice date. So as the invoices are generated and the invoice has an invoice date, and once it hits 2 days prior in this rule will pick up that invoice and auto charge the credit card associated to the auto payment rule. This allows you to get out of the business of reminding your customers, of following up. If you work with your customers to set up these auto pay rules, and then the system will just automatically charge, and you can have a nice steady stream of cash flow as invoices are coming due. So another capability that many customers have taken interest to and are using, along with many other areas within our solution. And to highlight a few of those, just so that you're aware, we do process and have the capability of processing returns or refunds against credit cards, refunding the monies again to the original order and credit card that was used. We can process against back orders and future dated orders if you have those capabilities or those processes within your system. Along with, as I mentioned earlier, we have processes to allow you to reconcile all of these payments and manage them. We have customers that are processing upwards of 3,500 credit card transactions a day, to some customers that are just doing 25 to 30 transactions a day. So we handle all volumes, being able to manage, taking you through the process from beginning to end, and allowing us to work with you to configure the solution to meet your processes as you desire and as you require within your JD Edwards solution. In addition, I'd like to invite you to visit our website, smartercommerce.net. And within our website, you'll find a resources tab, product documentation. If you go there, you're going to see product documentation on all of our capabilities. But obviously, since this is a payments demonstration, I'm going to highlight the documentation associated to payment processing. Please visit that to see all of the capabilities you're going to find within our solution, because there's many that I have not highlighted or touched on as part of this demonstration. And you can also visit to see and read about our electronic invoice presentment and payment portal for your customers. This is a payment portal, and here is an example. This is our demonstration electronic payment portal, where your customers, and this would be branded to your, again, company specifications, your logo, colors, font styles, and so on. But this is where your customer could log into a secure payment portal and view all types of historical information and make payments. So they can see invoice history and dive into the details of a particular invoice. They can also see and download the actual physical invoices if you archive them. They can make payments against these invoices themselves, walking through the payment process and entering payment. And they can see order history, going in and be able to manage and view the status of different orders that they've placed with your organization, so that they can self-service themselves without having to call in to your call center or salesperson. So this is a payment portal and order inquiry solution that is tied real-time into your JD Edwards, allowing your customers to self-service themselves in a secure portal. All righty, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, and we're coming close to the end of our demonstration and our time together. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and allow Jerry Van Dalen to give a few closing comments as part of what possibly are some next steps. Thank you for everyone on the webinar.
Excellent, Diego. Thank you so much for walking us through all those different use cases. Like you said, definitely a lot of information there. Throughout the webinar, we've been kind of receiving typically questions from the audience. We'll stop the recording here in just a minute to kind of address some of those additional questions. Again, many of those have been addressed privately. Just as a next step here, I mean, if this is something that your organization is interested in, perhaps you're in the UK, you run JD Edwards Enterprise One, the existing payment setup or operation that you have is just kind of clunky, it's outdated, perhaps it's a very manual process. There's certainly a lot to be gained from an automated JD Edwards connected solution. Even from a security standpoint, just to streamline everything into one application, a lot of potential there. And then even some of the tools in the toolbox that Diego shared today, invoice pay by email, authorized by email or authorized by message, invoice pay by message, even launching an invoice payment portal to enable your customers to get online and answer the questions for themselves instead of making a phone call, even complete an invoice payment. All of these capabilities are really just designed to help your team, help the CSR team, help the AR team, even help the IT department within your organization simplify payments from an operations standpoint. So with that said, feel free to reach out to us. Again, we can coordinate a one-on-one demo to get any additional questions addressed. Perhaps there's industry-specific requirements that you'd like to run through us. All of this, again, can be addressed on a one-on-one session. So a final thank you to all of today's attendees. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for the Q&A. With that said, I'll go ahead and stop recording and we'll wrap up today's webinar. Thank you to everybody. Have a great, wonderful week.